first of all, how are you? And
I'm fine, yeah, just ticking over. I mean, I'm a bit frustrated because my main subject matter is people,
of course.
and right now, you can't get to them. So it's like a summer that may well go down the drain. The whole year may go down the drain. I don't know.
And have you
That's yet
been
to be determined.
taking photographs during lockdown? And if
I've done a few, yeah. I mean, I've done a few around the house. I've done, some of the social isolating in our area. But I mean, it's nothing profound, I have to say. I don't particularly. I'm old, so I don't really want to go into the front line of all this stuff, as
yeah,
some of my colleagues in Magnum have done.
yeah. And actually, my neighbour upstairs is Caitlin Hughes, who's just become
Oh, there you go.
yeah,
Yeah,
and she's escaped to Wales,
she's
luckily.
gone to Anglesey. Yeah.
Yeah. And what have you kind of learned anything about yourself in quarantine?
Well,
Any
yeah. Well,
habits?
nothing I didn't know that. I get cabin fever when I can't really photograph properly. But I have done other things. The foundation's been very busy with doing challenges, selling a few prints, organising the library. So there's plenty going on. So we've only furloughed one member of staff, so the rest of us are all working away.
Yeah. And how do you kind of balance the domesticity of being home all the time with work? Is that a challenge or?
No, it's okay because I've got, one thing I've got is plenty of time, of course.
Yeah.
It's not a problem to find
Good.
time for anything. But go for walks and bike rides, and keep. Luckily, we've got a house with a shared garden, so
Oh, good.
we're not really as badly off as some people who don't have a garden at all. So
Yeah,
I cannot complain really.
that is the great divide, I think, people who have any form of
Mm-hmm.
outdoor space of their own. And what is the kind of general in Bristol? What's the between
Well,
neighbours?
Bristol is one of the better areas in terms of COVID-19. It's got quite a low death and contagious rate. So we've been quite lucky here. So compared to London or Manchester or all these other places
Yeah.
which are hotspots for COVID, we're relatively well off.
Yeah. And lockdown has kind of inspired a whole kind of slew of people and famous people doing all these kind of Instagram lives and constantly posting pictures and selfies and um, I think of your book Death by Selfie, your photo book. And how do you kind of feel about this way of communicating during
Well,
lockdown? So
I guess I'm all for it. I mean, you'll never be able to suppress that creative inspiration that people have. So they find different ways of expressing it and doing things. So yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to see what people are up to. And I've followed. I've done a lot of Instagram, BJP talks and this, that, and the other. So I've done my fair share of basically Zoom talks and this, that, and the other. So yeah,
and
I,
you're a
I
fan,
pretty much only do them.
you're a fan generally of Instagram.
Yeah, no, we use it quite extensively, and every week we do a story every week. So at the moment, we're doing different stories related, if you like, to the pandemic. So this week we're doing barber shops around the world
Okay.
because everyone, including myself, need a haircut.
You're not tempted to try yourself?
No, I think my partner's going to give me a trim late this week sometime. We're just waiting for the weather to improve so we can go back outside and do it, so we don't have hair around the house.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've done anything from shops of canned food through to barbershops and people in supermarkets. So we try and keep the Instagram thread relevant. So we have the Martin Parr Studio, which we've got over 500,000 followers on, and then we have the foundation where we have less. But that's where you'll find the challenges. In fact, it's a hair week because this week's challenge is to do something around the theme of hair.
Yeah.
Haircuts,
Like
hair generally. So invite your audience to come to the Martin Parr Foundation
yes, absolutely.
Instagram, where you'll see the challenge. I think it's going to be launched today. And we have a prize every week of a signed Martin Parr book.
Great. I will for sure. And apart from the foundation having had to postpone everything this year, are there any other kind of changes you imagine once you're able to resume operation? Once all this
Well,
is
we don't know, but we have events like this. Clearly, we may have to do social distancing for them in which case we might stream the talks as well, limit the numbers. We're waiting for the guidelines to be put down by the government, and then we'll work around that. But obviously, it's going to be a different world that we go into post-pandemic.
And how big is your team there?
We've got about 8 people working for the foundation and for my own business. So they're sort of split between the two setups. But we all share the same building. And of course, most of them are working at home, but things like the printer has to come in and do printing. You can't take the printer home. But most people are working from home.
Yeah. And what was the kind of main impetus for starting the foundation?
I guess, I'm a great believer in British documentary photography. So I wanted to have a place where this would be celebrated, appreciated, collected. The books are there. And so it's a sort of like a research place and a place where you can share the considerable achievements of the underrated British documentary photographer.
And how is your time kind of divided between, or is it all one, between taking photographs yourself and the
they all come together. I mean, I have a big say. I have a team of people, so we obviously discuss what we want to show, how we're going to show it. I'm busy being a photographer too, so luckily I don't have to do anything like processing or printing. That's all done for me by people I can trust explicitly. So the rest of us get together and determine. We have trustees for the foundation, so we talk to them about what we should be doing. We have a very active membership scheme, which means you get a percentage off in our bookshop. We have a very active online bookshop, which is really busy at the moment. So, we keep ourselves going.
Yeah. I feel like this whole situation, this pandemic, has kind of revealed so much around the disgusting inequality in Britain and how kind of...
Well, yes, that is indeed the case, yeah. The inequalities have been being, I guess, exaggerated by 10 years of austerity have really come to the forefront.
And your work kind of always is so, around class and culture. And what have been your feelings around it? And do you kind of...
Well, I'm a classic left-wing, photographer. I mean, I think most people who photograph people, if they're photojournalists or documentary photographers, come from the left. It's almost inevitable, really, because you have to like people to have that empathy that you need to make the pictures work. So yeah, I'm pretty cross. I'm a classic Remainer, of course. You don't need to ask that, as you are probably. And
sure am.
That sort of angered that got me more angry. But in a sense, the sort of friction I feel about Britain is one of the things I try and express through photography. So it gives me an excuse to use photography as a form of therapy. So in that sense, it actually works to my advantage.
And will you put together something around the photographs you've taken during this lockdown, or?
No, probably not. But I have thought about doing a book called, looking at the past era, because it's never going to be the same again.
Yeah.
Almost like a summation of that past life that we all knew.
Yeah.
I mean, this summer we'll be posting pictures of crowded beach scenes and crowds at festivals, just to show how different our life was to what we're going to have in the future. I mean, maybe in 2-3 years' time it'll be back to normal, but it's not going to be fast.
No, it's certainly going to be a long process. And as you say, I don't think things will return. There won't be there's no such thing as returning to normal. And what do you think the kind of long-term impacts will be on the art world and art and photography world?
Well, there'll be, it'll be more difficult to become a photographer that is sustainable. There'll be less work around. It'll be more difficult to sell prints because some people will be running out of money. It's going to be a tough landscape out there. So, if you're good, you're always going to survive and do well. If you're not, it's going to be more of a struggle than before, I'd say.
Yeah. And
all the budgets for things like newspapers are even further going to be cut. Magazines, they were pretty low anyway. So that as a form of income is almost going to dry up. Now, what I don't know yet is whether the world, when it comes round to engaging with photography, whether they'll want to have a form of escapism or whether they'll be interested in photographs in the documentary style of the real world. That's the big unknown, really, how people will respond to that.
And for the kind of, aspiring and budding photographers, do you have any, in terms of them kind of finding subject matter at home and feeling inspired? Do you have any kind of advice or?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're good and you've got something original and it's to do with the way you connect to the world out there, then you're going to be fine. But most people end up doing generic work where they copy other people.
Yeah,
It's sort of, they don't really find their own voice in photography. So that challenge of finding that and locating it and making it work is going to be just as tough as before, if
sure.
not tougher.
And how do you feel about iPhone photography?
Yeah, no problem. I don't mind how the pictures are taken, as long as they're telling us a story about the connection between the photographer and the world we live in.
And can you think, just lastly, can you think of any kind of silver linings, in terms of?
Well, they always say that out of disaster, good will come. So every cloud has a silver lining. What that silver lining is yet to be, we don't know. I mean, perhaps if we all stop traveling in the way that we did before, like tourism, people fly less. I mean, that could be a good thing. So in a sense, you could argue the green movement has scored a big hit with this whole pandemic. But
I've
that's
heard,
all to be resolved. We don't really know how it'll pan out.
I've heard you're not a fan of holidays anyway, or you don't believe in them.
No, not really. No, no, no. I do work trips.
Yeah. As long as you make
But I
it.
mean, I probably will be doing less of them, because no one's inclined to jump on a plane at the moment at all.
That's true. That's true. And your partner is she in the same kind of world, or?
No, she's a writer, and she's a swimming addict. So we
Okay.
often go to, it did us very well. We'd go to the beach, I'd photograph off on the beach, and she would go swimming.
I hope you can do that again soon. Well, thank you. I think that's
Okay.
that's brilliant.